Derek thought about the agreement he'd made with Barry the day before, but didn't answer right away whether he'd stay. It wasn't until after dinner and as evening settled in, with no reply from Barry, that he finally decided to remain. Charlotte was delighted. She chatted casually with Derek about childhood memories, eagerly pulling out the family photo album to look through their shared past. Derek didn't recall much of it, and Charlotte didn't expect him to say much. Most of the time, she was the one sharing the stories behind each photo. Derek listened quietly, offering a brief comment now and then. Though her smile never left her face, there was a faint hint of sadness in her eyes. She sensed something but didn't dare ask Derek, afraid it might upset him, so she kept talking about the past, hoping to help bring back some of his lost memories. Thankfully, even with some memories missing, Derek remained the kind and thoughtful young man he'd always been, showing not the slightest sign of impatience, staying by Charlotte's side all evening. For Charlotte, that was a small blessing in an otherwise painful situation. Charlotte didn't keep Derek up too late. After returning to his room for washing and getting ready for bed, he reached for his phone and finally saw Barry's reply. "Barry, I'm not coming back tonight." After ignoring the message for nearly a full day, Barry hadn't considered explaining his reasons, just letting Derek know he wouldn't be returning. Derek noticed the message had been sent at 8 o'clock. Did that mean he only remembered their arrangement when darkness had fully fallen? Derek couldn't find words to describe how he felt. Bitter, deeply let down. He considered confronting Barry but realized he didn't have the right to. He and Barry were only in a vague, uncertain kind of closeness. How could such an undefined connection even be named? Even if he were upset or sarcastic, did Barry really have to give in to him and provide an explanation? Derek gave a self-deprecating smile and simply replied, "Okay." When emotions are running high, it's better to give each other some space than to react impulsively. Barry stared at the message on his phone, looking exhausted as he lay back in the chair and covered his face with his hand. The family doctor nearby was packing up his medical bag, a hint of confusion in his expression. Mateo asked anxiously, "How is the young master doing?" The family doctor shook his head and sighed, and Mateo immediately assumed the situation was serious. He had already started to call for a car when he heard the doctor say, "Nothing major, just extreme fatigue from lack of sleep." "Has Barry been having trouble sleeping lately?" The family doctor glanced furtively at Barry, then leaned toward Mateo and lowered his voice. In his experience, Barry had always maintained a very disciplined routine. For something like heart palpitations or dizziness due to lack of sleep to happen to him was truly hard to believe. "You told me over the phone that he seemed unwell, but I didn't find anything abnormal during my check, and his temperature is normal. He's not running a fever." The family doctor had great confidence in his skills, which was precisely why he found the situation so puzzling. Mateo rushed him over urgently, telling him on the phone that Barry seemed trapped in a nightmare. His whole body was hot and unresponsive. It had only taken them a dozen minutes from call to arrival, so even with fast-acting medication, it wouldn't have worked that quickly. Mateo was also puzzled. Barry had said he'd been up late and needed rest earlier in the day, which made him suspicious, so he kept a close eye on his condition all along. Barry slept for a long time, from morning until afternoon, so long that Mateo began to feel uneasy. After knocking and getting no response, he used the spare key to open the door. The moment he stepped inside, Mateo realized something was wrong with Barry. The air conditioning was set very low, and Barry was drenched in sweat, as if he'd just been pulled out of water. This startled Mateo deeply. His age made him especially vulnerable to such stress, and he quickly called for the family doctor. But strangely, shortly after he placed the call, Barry woke up on his own. Once awake, the fever gradually subsided, though he still felt some heart palpitations and dizziness. He had planned to take a shower, but Mateo strongly objected. He was worried Barry might pass out in the bathroom. Barry was sticky all over from sweat and felt extremely uncomfortable. He didn't argue with Mateo about not being able to shower. Instead, he used a cloth dipped in water to wipe himself down briefly, then changed into fresh clothes. Knowing Mateo had called the doctor, Barry said nothing, simply waiting quietly for the doctor's arrival. The family doctor exchanged a glance with Mateo, This situation was truly puzzling. He first prescribed some calming medication for Barry. If symptoms persisted after taking it, a full medical checkup at the hospital would be necessary. After seeing the doctor off, Mateo returned and brought Barry the medicine with a glass of water. "Young master, please take your medicine before resting again," he said. Barry waved his hand. "Mateo, I'm hungry." The heart palpitations and dizziness faded gradually, leaving Barry feeling only hunger and exhaustion. His condition had come on suddenly and passed just as quickly. Like that strange dream, leaving everything confusing and hard to understand. When Mateo heard Barry was hungry, the worry on his face finally softened into a small smile. "Dinner's been kept ready all along," he said. "I'll have them bring it up right away." Mateo left, and the living room quickly fell into silence. Barry stayed on the chair without getting up. He closed his eyes, and his mind seemed to drift back into that dream. In the dream, he kept running without pause. Any attempt to stop brought a sharp sense of discomfort, as if every slow step meant losing something vital. He couldn't remember how long he'd been walking in the dream. The world around him was completely dark, except for a distant light guiding his way. His instinct told him to move toward it, but each step forward made him feel worse. His breath seemed gone, his body grew heavy, and his feet felt like they were chained. Invisible thorns surrounded him. They pressed in tightly, pushing him away from the light. Barry could no longer fight. He only snapped back to awareness when Mateo's voice broke through. When he woke, his body felt unwell. But as his mind cleared, the discomfort faded quickly. The fear from the dream melted away, leaving only a steady pounding in his chest. He tried to reach out to Derek, but noticed his phone had turned off on its own. After charging it and turning it back on, messages from both Derek and Levi came through one after another. Levi said he couldn't get in touch with Derek and had even called to check. He replied to Levi, then stared blankly at Derek's chat window. The sky outside was dark now. He could no longer keep his appointment and should have sent a quick apology with an explanation. But as he typed, the regret transformed into overwhelming longing. Like a flood rising and pulling him under, he couldn't share his fragile state. He feared Derek's concern might make him lose control and rush back to him. To him, Derek was like a guiding light in his dreams. When everyone else's attention was on William, only Derek truly looked at him. Derek had given him all the care and attention, making him feel so certain that it almost seemed natural for Derek to belong to him. But last night's video changed everything. Until he figures out who that person is, how can he still take this care for granted? Barry sensed the quiet shame within himself. He held back his emotions, hid his discomfort, and only told Derek he wouldn't be coming after all. Derek's reply wasn't as lively as usual. So simple it almost felt like frustration was written between the lines. Barry noticed, but pretended not to see. Derek couldn't sleep all night. The sharp clarity he'd only felt before in the old Lou family house returned again. But this time it wasn't because of a change in surroundings. It was because of his inner state. He tossed and turned until late at night, finally drifting into a light sleep for less than 3 hours before the alarm woke him. Dazed from sleep, he ate quickly, got in the car, yawned through the drive, and when he stepped out at the office building, the cool rain on his face brought him back to full awareness. It's raining. Derek only just realized it. The city had been getting colder since yesterday, with sun showing up and disappearing at times. Today, the sky was completely covered in clouds, and soft rain kept falling. The driver's car was parked right below the building, just a few steps from the main entrance, and he offered to bring Derek an umbrella. Derek said no thanks, took a few quick steps up the stairs, and walked straight into the office building. The comfortable weather of the rainy day made Derek, already feeling drowsy, nod off again just minutes after he'd seemed alert. He went to the break room to make himself a cup of coffee, hoping it would help him stay awake. "Derek, did you manage to reach Barry yesterday?" Derek was walking back with his coffee when he passed Levi's office and was called out. Levi couldn't hold back his curiosity, his eyes clearly showing his interest. Derek, half asleep, sipped his coffee and glanced slowly at him. He tried to act casual, but hearing the mention of Barry still made his heart skip a beat. "He's resting. I didn't interrupt him," Derek said calmly. The coffee tasted bitter. Derek had forgotten to add sugar, and the bitterness spread from his tongue down his throat, lingering deep in his chest. He couldn't help frowning and decided he didn't want to continue the topic. Turning away to leave, a shadow fell beside him, sharp, well-fitted suit highlighting the man's strong frame, making his broad shoulders and long legs even more noticeable. Derek looked up and met Barry's gaze. Their eyes locked for a brief moment, then both quietly looked away, as if silently agreeing on the unspoken tension between them. "You irresponsible no-show who disappeared without a word. I was really worried about you. I'm officially adding you to my blacklist today. Not one more word from me." Derek moved to the side, silently muttering in his mind with a blank expression. Barry's gaze returned to him, noticing the tired droop of his eyelids and how he looked unusually low on energy. Could it be because he didn't get enough rest? "Barry, why did you come in person?" Levi leaned forward from behind his computer, one elbow on the desk and fingers steepled under his chin, wearing that classic watching drama unfold look. Barry's attention shifted to him. "There's a business dinner tonight." Derek had already started to leave, but stopped in his tracks when he heard that. Levi chimed in smoothly, "You're going with Derek. You're coming with me." Barry and Levi spoke at the same time. Levi's sentence trailed off mid-word, his voice caught in his throat, almost choking on his own saliva. His casual smirk froze, eyes turning wide with surprise as he pointed at himself. "Me? Seriously, how long has it been since he last attended an event with Barry? Since Derek took over as assistant, this has always been his responsibility. Normally, wouldn't it make sense for Derek to go instead?" Levi was momentarily confused. Derek had his back turned, so he couldn't see Derek's expression. Only Barry deliberately avoiding eye contact with him. The tension between the two was almost tangible, leaving Levi frozen in thought. "Don't get me involved. This kind of situation is way beyond my comfort zone." Derek thought Barry had come to find him, only to realize he'd misread the situation. He stared at his coffee and let out a self-deprecating smile. "Too bitter. Should have added some sugar." Derek couldn't bring himself to drink it, so he turned and headed to the break room to pour it out. Barry watched his back but didn't call out. Unsettled, Levi stepped forward and studied Barry closely from all angles, rubbing his chin as he asked, "Did you two have a fight?" Barry shot him a sideways glance. "You've got quite the imagination. Would my eyes really be mistaken? You won't even look at him. What's making you so uneasy?" Levi wasn't fazed and pressed on. Barry lowered his gaze, hiding the intensity in his eyes. Barry reached up to loosen his tie, as if he had 1,000 words on his mind, yet kept them all locked behind his lips. What he thought was indifference was just because he wasn't facing Derek directly. In front of Derek, there was nowhere to hide. Rain kept falling outside the window, mist spreading across the glass in thin lines. Derek's work for today had been passed to Levi. Light tasks with little physical effort. He'd been yawning since morning and felt bored all day until quitting time. Barry was determined to take Levi to the event, and even though Levi tried to speak up for Derek at the end of the day, things didn't change. Derek felt frustrated, unsure what went wrong. Could it be because Barry hadn't fully forgiven him over the fight? But he'd made peace with the person that day, and Charlotte said Barry even stood up for him. He didn't seem to dislike him at all. "Derek, it's time to go. Why haven't you left yet?" After finishing his tasks, Levi noticed Derek's office door was still open and glanced at his watch in mild surprise that he'd stayed past closing. Derek was distracted. He looked out the window at the steady rain and said, "I haven't booked a ride yet. I'll do it soon and head home." It was rush hour, and it was raining. Rides nearby were hard to come by. Derek didn't feel like going downstairs, so he just stayed seated a little longer. Levi asked, puzzled, "It's raining today. Didn't you drive?" Derek slumped lazily over his desk, sounding tired. "No, I went back home yesterday and stayed overnight. I came in this morning with my family's driver." Levi wasn't very familiar with Derek's background, but he vaguely remembered from a prior investigation Barry had ordered. Derek came from a well-off family, and his household had business ties with their company. Still, Derek was usually very low-key. Aside from driving a limited edition car, there wasn't anything else about him that suggested he was a wealthy heir. Hearing him mention family matters now, Levi casually said, "Then why not have the driver come pick you up? I'm not going back to my parents' place. They're still working and flying to a city today. The driver has to go with them too. Just as Derek finished speaking, a figure appeared in the doorway. Barry stood tall and poised, impeccably dressed in a suit from head to toe. With his icy expression, he gave off an unmistakable sense of distance. Seeing Derek there, Barry looked surprised and couldn't help but ask, "Why haven't you gone home yet?" Derek didn't want to respond, so he turned his head away as if pretending not to hear. But then he thought better of it. Acting that way at the office wasn't appropriate, and replied stiffly, "I'm waiting for a ride." Levi seized the moment to explain in detail exactly what Derek meant by waiting for a ride. Knowing that Derek had met the Jiang family's parents alone and stayed overnight at their home, Barry couldn't help but be surprised. He thought Derek would feel uneasy around them, given how nervous he usually was in such situations. But now it seemed he was handling it quite well. "No need to wait anymore. I'm just about to leave anyway. I can give you a ride home," Barry said, turning to Levi. "You know where he lives. Drop off his clothes later and meet me there." Levi gave a quick nod, saying it was no problem. Derek was shutting down his computer when he heard that. He didn't react outwardly, just silently vented in his mind, "Who needs you to drive me? Why the sudden cold treatment? One moment pushing me away, the next offering a small kindness. What's with that?" Derek dragged his feet on purpose. While Levi went to handle dinner arrangements, Barry stood by the door waiting for him. Barry heard every thought clearly. Derek's quiet resentment still lingered. His gaze softened slightly as he rubbed his wristwatch, realizing that avoiding the issue wouldn't help anything. Derek hadn't said a word, but there was a lingering tension inside him. Over time, that quiet frustration could grow into something sharp and painful. There wasn't much left on the desk. Even if Derek moved like a turtle, he should have finished by now. He pulled out his phone to check his order, and noticed no one had picked it up yet. Feeling unsettled and with nothing else to stall for, he slowly stood up, walked over to Barry, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Barry, am I taking up your time?" Barry raised an eyebrow. "Not at all." Barry's driver today was Lucas, who opened the rear door as usual to wait for Derek and Barry to get in. Derek didn't go to the back seat, but went straight into the passenger side. Lucas paused briefly, then looked up at Barry. Seeing that Barry didn't react strongly, he figured the two young men were having a minor disagreement. He kept quiet, pretending not to notice, and focused on doing his job. This time, Lucas drove all the way into the residential complex until they reached Derek's building entrance. The rain outside had eased up a lot. Derek got out first and was about to close the door when he heard Lucas say, "Barry, this is medicine Mateo asked me to have ready for you. Make sure you don't forget to take it." Lucas handed Barry a small pill box containing white tablets. Derek couldn't make out exactly what they were. "What's wrong with Barry?" Derek asked. Lucas said, "Barry wasn't feeling well yesterday." Before he could finish speaking, a soft cough came from the back seat. Barry shot him a sharp look. Lucas gave a nervous laugh. He hadn't meant to bring it up at such a moment. Barry had been uncooperative, and Mateo couldn't get through to him, so this was the only way he could think of, knowing Barry wouldn't take it himself in front of Derek. There was no way Derek would just let it go. If the others couldn't convince him, how could Derek fail? As it turned out, Mateo had been right. When Derek saw Barry refusing to take the medicine, he leaned over and said, "Give it here. I'll make sure you take it." Lucas quickly passed the pills over without hesitation, fearing that even a second's delay might let Barry stop him. Derek took the medicine and casually opened Barry's car door. Standing in the rain, he glanced at the slightly uneasy figure with a faint smile on his face. "Barry, should I ask you again to get out?" Lucas finished his task and drove off in a flash. Barry followed Derek upstairs, while Derek kept studying the medicine box without saying a word the whole way. After they got inside, changed their shoes, Derek plopped down on the sofa, placed the medicine box on the coffee table, and looked up at Barry. "Barry, don't you have anything you want to say?" Derek kept saying Barry's name in a sarcastic tone. After holding that frustration for 2 days, he had imagined all sorts of reasons, but never thought it was because Barry had been hiding his illness on purpose. Compared to the idea of being sick, Derek actually found other explanations easier to accept. Suddenly, he understood why Barry had been so upset on the day he fought with William. They both cared deeply, When one knew the other was hurt or unwell, their first instinct was always to stay by their side. In moments of vulnerability, people naturally turn to those they trust most. In front of such someone, they can let down their guard, be serious, or even act a little affectionate or clingy if needed. But Barry had been sick and didn't tell Derek, even pushing him away. Being shut out when someone needs support made Derek feel like he wasn't needed at all. Derek wasn't just angry, he was hurt too. Barry sat down beside Derek and said, "It's not a big deal. Just feeling under the weather." "Mateo's overreacting. So you thought it was okay to hide this from me? Or do you really believe I don't need to know?" Derek turned his head, and he was so close to Barry that even the smallest shift in emotion was impossible to miss. Barry watched the sharpness in Derek's expression as anger tightened his features, and a wave of sudden, unwanted images flashed through his mind. Images of someone with short cropped hair, a bright smile, and an energy that closely matched Derek's own. Barry could hardly tell the difference anymore. He fixed his gaze on Derek and said quietly, "Derek, are you worried about me?" Derek's voice came out sharp. "What kind of nonsense is that? You didn't reply to my messages. Your phone was off. I thought something had happened to you. He couldn't bring himself to say he'd feared Derek might be betrayed or harmed, just like in the story. The surge of emotion hit an invisible wall and shattered into frustration, leaving only a dull ache behind. Derek took a deep breath, turned away, and silently accepted his own misfortune. "Why would you even worry about me?" Barry wasn't ready to let the topic drop. He reached out and gently lifted Derek's chin, turning his face back toward him. He already knew why he was worried. He just needed to hear it said aloud, even if he didn't voice it. The kind of care that didn't need words had quietly woven itself into their everyday moments. Where once Barry had stood apart, free to walk away at any time, now Derek felt tied down by something deeper. Something he couldn't ignore. The way Derek looked at Barry was no longer simple or clear. Derek met Barry's gaze straight on. The blue of his eyes filled entirely with him. He needed an explanation. And Barry wanted a real answer. Unlike before, when avoidance and vague replies were easy, Barry's question broke through the haze between them, finally revealing what they'd both been trying to hide. "We're friends, right? Do friends need a reason to care about each other?" Derek bit his lip, holding back the urge to say more. "Just friends." Barry pressed forward, clearly unsatisfied with that answer. His gaze grew deep and intense, his expression suddenly serious and heavy with pressure. "Friendship isn't this fragile, because I don't claim space over my friends. But with you, I can't help crossing boundaries." Derek, think carefully before answering. "Are we really just friends?" A bird can't hide its head in the sand forever, and Derek couldn't keep avoiding feelings he couldn't control. Barry's questions pinned him into a corner. The fingers gripping his jaw gently traced along his face, warm, unsettling. Derek had nowhere to go. Crossing a line became the real challenge. He hesitated, struggled. His face might resemble another's, but he wasn't that person. He was letting Barry love an illusion. Just as Derek almost spoke up, a knock at the door broke the moment. Derek found his opening, pulled free from Barry's grasp, and said, "I'll get it." Outside was Levi, come to deliver clothes. He gave only 2 brief words, didn't even look at Barry, and left straight after the elevator. Derek brought the clothes back inside. Barry remained on the sofa, eyes following Derek's every move. "It seems this question is harder for you than it looks. Give me some time." Derek no longer avoided the issue, but with Snowball absent, he couldn't yet make sense of what lay ahead. It was time to seriously consider their relationship, take some time to address the challenges, and give Barry a clearer future. Barry didn't push him, taking the clothes with a quiet question. "Could I use the bathroom to freshen up?" "Of course." Derek led him into the bathroom and opened the cabinet. "These are new towels, a toothbrush, and a cup. Over here is body wash and shampoo. Auntie stocked up with several brands. Just pick whichever you like." Barry raised an eyebrow. "Which 2 do you usually use?" This one. Derek spoke quickly and pointed without thinking, then suddenly realized what he'd done. Turning to look at Barry, Barry studied him intently, stepping closer. "Want to join me?" Derek quickly stepped back and made a swift retreat. He sat down on the sofa, glancing at the clothes Levi had sent. classic black. Derek remembered the pin he'd bought at the auction, one he hadn't been able to let go of. Tonight might finally be the right moment. After his shower, Barry couldn't find suitable clothes and stepped out wrapped in a towel, water droplets from his damp hair trailing down his neck and across his chest. He kept a steady routine, always staying active with workouts. Once undressed, it was easy to see the results of that discipline. But no one was around. It felt like he'd been showing off for someone who couldn't see. Barry paused briefly, glancing toward Derek's bedroom with a quiet chuckle. He picked up the clothes from the sofa and walked into the dressing room. When he came out fully dressed, Derek suddenly reappeared on the couch, standing up instantly upon seeing him. "Are you heading to the evening event?" Barry nodded. "The dinner starts at 7. It's about time we go." Barry hesitated for a moment, feeling a bit regretful about turning down Derek earlier. He considered asking if Derek wanted to come along, but after a brief pause, he let it go. "Tonight's just a business-only gathering. There won't be much in the way of entertainment beyond discussing deals." Derek walked over with his hands behind his back, giving Barry's chest a light tap and smiling. "Isn't this area feeling a bit empty?" Barry responded easily. "Yeah. Just waiting for you to move in." Derek froze, his face turning slightly warm. "I didn't mean that. Here, this is for you." Derek pulled out a pin hidden behind his back. Its silver snowflake design shimmered brightly, a gift delayed by avoidance. Barry pointed to his chest. "Won't you help me put it on?" "Sure." Derek stepped closer, carefully choosing a spot and fastening the pin with precision. Barry looked down at him. From this angle, Derek's eyelids had a subtle upward curve, and his lashes were thick and long. The focused expression on his face was hard to look away from. "Perfect. That looks really good now." Derek adjusted Barry's clothes and looked up, meeting his eyes directly. Barry leaned slightly forward, one hand gently holding the back of Derek's neck as his lips brushed softly against his ear. "Get some rest," he said quietly. "I'm heading out now." Chapter. The light rain fell steadily, and the city lights shone brightly. The grand hall was filled with prominent guests, laughter and clinking glasses echoing through the air. Barry stood at the second floor railing overlooking the ballroom. The drink in his glass swayed gently, and through its surface he saw a sea of well-dressed guests, their presence like waves under soft glow. "Barry, why are you all alone here?" "Trying to escape the crowd." The well-dressed young man approached with a drink in hand, lightly tapped his glass against Barry's, then leaned casually on the railing, a playful smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Barry glanced at him and asked, "When did you get back?" "Just arrived. It just so happened that grandfather was hosting this gathering, so my dad brought me along. You know how things have been with our family business lately. My father wants to shift direction, but grandfather won't agree. I'm stuck in the middle, basically a messenger passing words back and forth." Maverick sighed. "Honestly, it's embarrassing. He's old enough to know better, yet still insists on playing the tough guy." Maverick sighed. The dinner tonight was hosted by his grandfather, and all the guests were well-known figures in their circle. His father had just argued with his grandfather and felt too embarrassed to show up, so he'd been pushed forward as a stand-in. Maverick couldn't even bring himself to say it. Here was an adult who still clung to pride at the cost of his own comfort. Caleb still as witty as ever. Barry and Maverick were old classmates. Their families had known each other for years, and they got along well. Each knew the other fairly well. But a few years ago, Maverick had gone abroad to study, so contact between them had been less frequent, and Barry wasn't quite sure about his current situation. Meeting Maverick again tonight surprised Barry. Barry had heard about the Chun family's recent challenges. Caleb had his own plans. When it came to reconnecting with people, he'd reach out to Mr. and Mrs. Liu instead of trying to build a connection with Barry, a younger generation member. Sending Maverick here wasn't just about testing his own grandfather's stance. It was likely also meant to strengthen the bond between Maverick and Barry, so they could support each other when needed. Barry wasn't someone who turned people away, and considering Maverick's easygoing nature, he was definitely a person worth becoming friends with. The two sat upstairs chatting and catching up, the mood warm and natural. Maverick shared some stories from his time abroad, then shifted tone. "I've heard all kinds of rumors overseas. Your big news is coming up. When are you sending out the invites so I can come to your celebration?" Barry didn't immediately understand and said, "What? Marriage? Isn't your family planning to join forces with the Hengxing group?" Maverick assumed Barry was pretending not to know. He chuckled lightly at his own expense and glanced around downstairs, noticing no sign of Derek, only Levi, an old classmate, chatting with others. "Where's your usual shadow today?" Every word Maverick said made sense to Barry. But put together, it all felt like confusion. His family had worked with Hungshing before, but when had a marriage alliance been decided? He hadn't heard anything about it from his parents. "Who's this little tale of yours?" Barry couldn't recall anyone close to him besides Levi. His temple pulsed with a sharp ache, and as Maverick spoke, flashes of images rushed through his mind. Faint and unclear, the harder he tried to focus on them, the more his head felt like it was being stabbed, making concentration impossible. Maverick didn't notice his odd behavior. Instead, spotting a familiar face approaching, he nudged Barry gently with his elbow and said with playful curiosity, "The Gu family's really lucky. Where did they find this lovely young lady?" Barry was distracted by the comment, and those strange images vanished from his mind. He shook off the odd feeling and glanced in the direction Maverick indicated. Since it was the Chun family patriarch's banquet, the Gu family had also been invited. William seemed much more reserved this time, avoiding any scene-making in the crowd. Amelia stood beside him, her arm linked with his. Her smile was a little stiff, her striking eyes dulled and lifeless, hinting at quiet weariness. Maverick went on, admiring how delicate and graceful Amelia looked. Quite unlike William's usual choices. Those words made Barry glance sideways, his expression darkening slightly. When Amelia first came into the Liu family's care, her adoptive parents had held a special event to introduce her to society. Maverick was there at the time. How could he not recognize her? Barry offered helpfully, "She's Amelia, huh?" Maverick looked completely blank for a moment, frozen in place. After a pause, he finally came to his senses and said, "Oh right, girls change so much as they grow up. But how did she end up with William?" When Amelia first joined the Liu family, she really was pale and undernourished, still not fully grown. 12 or 13 years old, shorter than most of her peers due to poor nutrition. It made sense that Maverick didn't recognize her for that reason, but the uneasy feeling just wouldn't fade away. Barry ran his fingers along the rim of his wine glass, his expression heavy and silent. After William took Amelia upstairs, he came straight over to them. As the host, Maverick couldn't ignore the guest and exchanged a few polite words with him. Amelia didn't join their conversation, and her gaze was no longer fixed entirely on William. She looked toward Barry and whispered softly, "Brother, it's been a while." Barry gave a slight nod without any other expression. It was the first time since Amelia left the Gu family that she acted this respectful in front of him. Maverick noticed the tension between them. Remembering that Barry and William didn't get along, he imagined some dramatic love feud in his mind. Glancing around discreetly, seeing that Barry wasn't going to bring it up, he wisely let it drop. William wrapped an arm around Amelia's waist and pulled her close. His tall frame and firm demeanor made the gesture feel like a display of control from her perspective. Her smile faltered for a moment, then she quickly glanced at Barry. Seeing no reaction, her eyes dimmed slightly. William played with her hair and looked at Barry with a challenge in his voice. "Barry, you're still as decisive as ever after these few days, using personal favors to get your assistant's way on my project. I'm truly honored, though those deals weren't finalized yet. Just take them, if you like." William had bullied Derek before, and Barry had caused trouble for his business deals. Even though the deals hadn't officially been set, their sudden collapse was still enough to cause him serious stress. He wasn't really as calm as he appeared. He just didn't want to lose face in front of Barry. Barry gave him a sideways glance and said coldly, "William, you've been talking about these deals for ages without closing anything. If I just give them a little push and they fall through, maybe you should take a closer look at your team's performance. Wondering why such simple matters keep falling apart, forcing you to step in. William is indeed the CEO of Lingfeng, but he still has to answer to the board. The Gu family, once shadowy and now trying to go legit, has a complicated internal structure that's far from as smooth as Huanyu's. William used to have full control over them, so he ran things his way, but after a series of setbacks, the board started questioning his judgment and began actively undermining him. Barry's ability to disrupt these projects wouldn't have been possible without support from Lingfeng's board. William flinched at the words, his expression darkening slightly, but quickly regained his composure with a calm smile. I don't need your help managing my company. I came here thinking Derek might be with you, but it seems I was mistaken. Barry now had Levi by his side again, a development William saw as a positive sign. Barry adjusted the pin on his jacket and said, Derek didn't get much rest last night because of me, so I asked him to stay home and take it easy. William, are you here to apologize? I wonder how sincere your intentions really are. The pin on Barry's chest was the one Derek had bought at the auction that day. William had been there and recognized it instantly. The snowflake design of the pin stood out sharply against his black suit, making William feel uneasy. He picked up on Barry's affectionate tone and clear pride. It was nothing short of a challenge. Could it be that you brought nothing but empty words to apologize? Barry noticed William staring at the pin, then added, My Derek doesn't need just a few apologies. Take it easy, or I can't promise you'll still be sitting in your CEO chair when we talk again. Though people often compare Barry and William here, the truth is that William only likes to draw attention. He has the backing of the Gu family to do so, but that same support is both his strength and weakness. He brings value, so the Gu family supports him. Once he stops being useful, they'll drop him without hesitation. Barry is different. Before taking over the family business, he successfully built his own company from scratch. After stepping in, he took charge with clear direction. His parents waited until he was solidly established before managing overseas operations themselves. His position remains strong even when things get tough. Even if he ran into serious trouble, the company's top leaders wouldn't think about replacing him. They'd focus on how to handle the crisis. He had strong support behind him, giving him far more confidence than William. Barry didn't care about the trouble William might cause him, because those challenges weren't enough to seriously affect him. But if the situation were reversed and Barry caused some issues for William, it would definitely keep William overwhelmed for a long time. Amelia looked at Barry with a pleading expression. Barry raised his glass and took a sip, completely ignoring her gaze. Her brow furrowed slightly, a flash of resentment quickly passing through her eyes. Maverick noticed the tense atmosphere but didn't want to pry. He made light conversation with William for a few moments before politely excusing him. What's going on between you and Amelia? Maverick asked. Barry set down his glass and said, She's already ended her foster relationship with the Liu family. William's path was Amelia's own choice. Barry respected that. If she were smart enough, she'd cut her losses and disappear far away with the money Barry gave her. But if she keeps refusing to let go, Barry won't interfere. Maverick was genuinely puzzled. To him, it was hard to imagine why a young woman raised in the Liu family would fall for someone like William, or risk breaking ties with her own family over him. I just don't understand today's young people, Maverick said dramatically. Am I getting too old to keep up? Barry replied with little interest. Maybe. He walked downstairs after saying that, and Maverick followed right behind, clearly unhappy with his vague response, launching into a one-sided argument all on his own. Barry nodded occasionally, offering just enough reaction to keep the conversation going, though whether he was actually paying attention was another matter entirely. Levi had made the rounds across the venue, completing all necessary social interactions. Now back by Barry's side, he clinked glasses with Maverick, his gaze lingering for 2 seconds on Maverick's closely shaved head before bluntly laughing. Maverick, I remember you went abroad. Not into monastic life. What kind of look is this? Maverick shot him a shut-up glance and ran his hand over his stubbly scalp, sighing with mock sorrow. My sister took care of me. Maverick had an older sister who kept a tight rein on him. Seeing Levi stay silent and staring with that pained expression, Maverick suddenly felt chills crawl up his arms and rubbed them briskly. What's wrong? Did Samuel really cheat on you? It's not about Samuel. Levi assumed Maverick was referring to Samuel taking his girlfriend, so he quickly spoke up in Samuel's defense. Barry stood nearby, still processing the first half of Maverick's comment when Mr. Chun arrived with 2 partners to introduce them. Mr. Chun held some traditional views but wasn't rigid or outdated. He was willing to adapt for the future of the Chin family, though he believed changes should be gradual, not rushed all at once. The people Mr. Chun introduced to Barry tonight were key to their upcoming collaboration direction. Barry exchanged a few words with them, and one of the men stood out for being especially enthusiastic, handing out business cards, offering drinks, and actively promoting his company. Out of respect for Mr. Chun, Barry didn't refuse. The man brought him a drink, which he took just a couple of sips before shifting the topic. But the man wasn't satisfied and kept dragging Barry into small talk while repeatedly offering more drinks. Barry felt the other man lacked personal boundaries, and Mr. Chun also seemed displeased by his persistent urging to drink. He finally spoke up. "You young folks get along better. Go chat with Maverick. I'm too old to keep you company much longer." Barry nodded, set down his glass, and left. Old Mr. Chun glanced at the smiling business partner beside him, his expression stern. "We'll discuss the collaboration another time. A person who lacks awareness won't have lasting partnerships." The business partner's smile froze on his face. Old Mr. Chun walked away with another guest. The man stood still for a while, then slipped away unnoticed and snatched Barry's used wine glass, avoiding the hall's security cameras as he headed outside. "William, I've taken care of everything you asked. As for the funds I applied for," in the hallway outside the hall, the business partner looked up at William with a fawning expression, bowing slightly. Though working with Chun family was rare, he desperately needed money. Large amounts of it right now. William held Amelia close and glanced through the glass at Barry, who seemed unaffected in the crowd. "Don't worry. You'll get every last bit you're owed. Just go home and wait." The business partner beamed with joy, quickly leaving the venue with his driver. William looked down at Amelia. "The path is already cleared for you. Don't let me down." Amelia's eyes filled with fear as she whispered, "Could I just pretend?" William traced a faint mark on Amelia's cheek, his gaze cold but his lips curled in a smile. "What do you think? Right now, your only value to me is your looks. Sure you want to bargain with me?" Amelia shivered and turned pale. Ever since she left the Liu family, William's attitude toward her had completely changed. What she thought was love meant nothing without power or profit behind it, especially after learning Derek was the heir to Stellar Group. William grew even harsher toward Amelia. He was just a step away from choosing Derek over Amelia. He hadn't asked Amelia about Derek before, but she had said Derek used to be just a bodyguard for Barry, and she didn't know why he suddenly gained Barry's attention and became his personal assistant. She kept Derek's identity vague, which led William to make the wrong assumption. But it didn't matter. So long as Barry and Derek weren't truly together, William still had a chance. He planned to use Amelia to ruin Barry's reputation. Once it came out, the Liu family would have to think about Amelia's future if they wanted to help Barry. Even with all the affection he might feel, could Derek ever accept someone like her? "Amelia, you should be thankful that I still find some use in you," William said, releasing her chin and gently patting her cheek. "Cheer up. Don't look so down. If you end up marrying Barry, it's not a bad deal at all." Amelia dared not argue back. She was pushed forward by William. The ballroom was brightly lit, yet to her it felt like complete darkness. She could barely see where she was stepping. Maverick and Levi exchanged a few barbs, each exposing the other's past missteps. Barry sat silently by, not joining in their conversation. Maybe it was because he'd had too much to drink tonight. He felt lightheaded and thirsty now, his throat dry and uncomfortable. He signaled a waiter to get him water. The waiter went to fetch it, but was intercepted halfway by Amelia. Amelia walked over with the water, her face showing a deep sense of sorrow, lips trembling as she said, "Brother, can I talk to you alone for a moment?" Maverick and Levi turned to look, but Barry didn't take the water. He replied coldly, "What needed to be said? I already told you the day you left the Liu family. There's no need for a private conversation between us." Amelia's hand froze midair. She awkwardly set the water on the table and glanced nervously around. This area was a separate lounge, divided from the main hall by a transparent glass wall, visible to all but soundproofed, making it quiet and private. At this time, most people were busy socializing. Only a few lingered in the lounge. Seeing she couldn't persuade Barry, Amelia turned to the other two with a pleading look. Her mind quickly shifted as she said, "Could I have just 2 minutes?" Levi didn't want to get involved, but Maverick, unaware of the situation, stood up and pulled Levi along. Come on, Let me buy you a drink." Amelia looked at Maverick gratefully and sat down beside Barry. "Brother, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong," Amelia said, clutching her dress and bowing her head as if deeply ashamed. Yet secretly fearing Barry might see the anger hidden in her eyes. She resented Barry for letting go of her so easily, and she hated Derek for stealing William's attention. Their beginning had been so perfect. William had always given her anything she wanted. She should have been cherished like a treasure, not treated as someone who could be called at any time. Barry gave her a quick glance and had no interest in hearing more. He stood to leave, but suddenly felt dizzy and fell back onto the sofa. His mind lost balance, and the world spun wildly before his eyes. Amelia immediately realized the drug was working. She rushed forward in feigned concern, gripping Barry's wrist. "Brother, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Barry's thoughts were foggy, his vision blurred, and Amelia's voice sounded far away, like it came from high above the clouds. "Brother, I'll help you rest," Amelia said, but in reality she pretended to be weak, collapsing onto the sofa beside Barry and leaning half her body against him. William wanted her to ruin Barry completely, leaving her no way out. She wasn't going to be that foolish. It was just about giving Barry a mark he could never erase. This situation works too. She only needed to act out a scene, pretend to cry for help, and with so many people around, how could Barry possibly escape? Amelia felt proud of her clever plan, but quickly suppressed the smile tugging at her lips, turning instead into a caring little sister. Using her voice to gently persuade Barry, Amelia prepared herself to scream, her heart racing and hands trembling with nerves. But to her surprise, at the moment she thought it was certain, Barry suddenly pulled his hand away and shot up from the couch. Barry felt unwell, with a constant buzzing in his ears that made his head ache severely. Amelia's name kept echoing in his mind. It felt like something deeply important. His subconscious urged him to trust her, yet his instincts resisted it fiercely. Barry steadied himself, barely able to make out what was happening around him. He stared down at Amelia with a commanding presence, placing one hand against his temple as he fought hard against the pull of his subconscious. Amelia was startled by his sudden push, but she quickly recovered. She couldn't let Barry go. She stood up and lunged toward him. Barry staggered backward to avoid her, crashing into the glass coffee table behind him. The sharp pain cleared his mind for a brief moment. A familiar face flashed through his thoughts. Someone with their hands on their cheeks, sitting at a desk watching him study, sunlight glowing across their face, their features bathed in golden light, radiant and vivid. Derek. Barry seemed to remember something. Floods of memories surged through his mind. His reddened eyes locked onto Amelia. His expression grew distant, then cold, until nothing remained but icy stillness. Amelia shivered under his gaze, a chill running from the top of her head down to her toes. Barry pushed past Amelia and headed for the door. Not far away, Levi and Maverick noticed something was wrong and hurried toward him. Levi reached him first, taking his arm. Seeing Barry's flushed face and sweat-drenched body, he felt a sinking dread in his chest. Without wasting a second, he stepped protectively in front of him. The situation was serious. Maverick wouldn't take any chances. "My car's right outside. Get him inside." Maverick hadn't planned to stay long. He'd parked at the far end, ready to leave at a moment's notice. Now it was perfect for Levi, saving him the trouble of finding another vehicle. "I'll stay behind and check the surveillance footage. Let me know if anything comes up." Maverick helped lift Barry into the back seat and tossed his keys to Levi. "The dinner tonight is hosted by the Chun family. If something were to happen to Barry, they would bear responsibility." Maverick had to catch the mastermind before the other side could destroy the evidence. With urgency on hand, Levi didn't hesitate. He jumped into the car, started the engine, and drove straight toward the hospital. Barry stared at the streaks of lights flashing past outside the window, tugging at his tie with a hoarse voice. "I'm not going to the hospital. I need to see Derek." Barry wasn't doing well. Levi's top priority should have been getting him to the hospital. But he refused and repeated that he wanted to see Derek. Levi glanced back at his condition, hesitated for a moment, then turned around and headed toward Derek's house. The passing lights outside the window were split into fragments. Flickering patterns danced across Barry's face. His eyes were half-lidded, his brow tightly furrowed. The medication blurred his mind as fragmented memories surged back like a rapid slideshow. In every one of those scattered memories, Derek's presence was everywhere. They grew up together like childhood friends, deeply close and innocent in their bond. It should have been a beautiful story people envied. But it ended with an argument. I was the one who pulled funding from that drama and had production paused. I've never stopped you from doing anything. My only request is that I'm not left in the dark last. Can't that be managed? If it weren't for me showing up this time, how long would you have kept lying to me? Did you even remember we're getting married? Derek, when you throw yourself into things for someone else, did you ever think about me? In a fog of confusion, Derek stood before Barry with his arm in a cast, looking uncertain and lost. He reached out to Barry, his expression filled with distress, trying hard to explain himself, but Barry pulled away from his hand. His eyes widened in shock, his eyes reddened and shimmering with unshed tears. In that instant, he looked like a small puppy abandoned by its owner. Ears drooping, utterly heartbroken, the argument quietly deepened the growing distance between them, pushing each other further apart. The last memory Barry held was Derek walking away from the Liu family ancestral home without looking back. And with that departure, everything turned upside down. Derek's memories vanished completely, replaced by Amelia. Even now, the lingering effects of the medication let Barry recall fragments, but they slipped through his grasp like a one-way ticket he couldn't return on. Still, a quiet voice inside kept urging him to go find Derek. Levi drove at high speed. Fortunately, the hotel chosen by the Chun family was close to Derek's home, allowing him to smoothly enter the residential area. As he pulled out his phone to call Derek, a dark figure suddenly darted in front of the car. Levi startled and slammed on the brakes just in time to avoid the shape. His body surged forward from inertia. Had it not been for the seatbelt, he'd have crashed into the steering wheel. Levi quickly turned to check on Barry's condition. Thankfully, Maverick had buckled him in. The impact jolted his body, but he wasn't hurt. He leaned his head up and looked at Levi, assuming they'd already arrived at Derek's building. He instinctively unbuckled the seatbelt to open the door. "Not yet," Levi said firmly. Before he could finish, someone pounded hard on the window from outside, shouting loudly, "What kind of driving is this? Don't you have eyes? You nearly hit my son. Get out of the car right now." Levi looked up to see a plump, middle-aged man in a white tank top, wearing an overly flashy gold chain around his neck, with a fierce expression and thick features that looked intimidating. His so-called son wasn't actually a child. It was a full-grown German shepherd, unleashed and without a muzzle, mouth still holding a frisbee. Clearly, the dog had dashed forward chasing the disc and nearly collided with Levi's vehicle. Levi was already in a rush over Barry's situation and didn't want to deal with this distraction. Just about to floor it and drive off when he heard the door open. Turning his head, he saw that Barry had stepped out of the car during their brief stop. Levi was startled and immediately jumped out to follow him, but the heavy man wouldn't let go, gripping his arm tightly while the dog growled aggressively nearby. "You're not getting away. Pay up." The man noticed Levi's sharp suit and expensive watch, guessing he was a wealthy target. His eyes lit up with greed as he tightened his grip. Levi spoke coldly, "Let go." The moment he finished speaking, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Derek, and Levi answered immediately. Derek's voice came through clearly with concern. "Levi, what's going on over there?" Derek had just stepped out of the shower and climbed into bed when Levi called. After answering, he heard only loud background noise. No response at first. Repeating his question several times with no answer, unease crept in, so he hung up and quickly redialed. The other end still had some static, but Levi's voice came through clearly. "Derek, go down and pick up Barry. He's not doing well right now. I've got a situation to handle here and can't make it over." Hearing that Barry was unwell, Derek jumped off the bed at once. "What happened to Barry? Where are you? Do you need help? I'm right in your neighborhood. Don't worry about me. First go find Barry. He was targeted at the party, and I tried to take him to the hospital, but he refused and insisted on coming to you. Help keep his condition stable until I finish up here and call you back. I'm on my way. Don't worry." Derek hurried to the door to grab his shoes. As he slipped one foot in, he suddenly sensed movement outside. He turned slightly and looked up. The door lock clicked softly, and Barry's tall figure appeared in the doorway. Derek saw him, and his tense heart finally relaxed. "Levi, Barry's already at my place. Just stay calm." Before Derek could finish speaking, a shadow fell across his vision. His phone was taken by Barry, and he was gently pulled into Barry's arms. Barry kissed him again. This time gentler, he brushed Derek's closed eyelids, pressed a soft kiss to his forehead, then whispered quietly into his ear, "Derek, don't be upset with me." Derek, in the building's lower area, Levi had someone deal with the man who kept dogs, then drove his car to Derek's building. He stepped out and was about to head upstairs when he remembered he didn't have an elevator key or the access code. He called Derek, but there was no answer. At a time like this, anyone would know what had happened. Levi stood in silence for a long while, let out a soft sigh, then turned and walked back to his car. Fine, he wasn't needed here. He might as well use the time to find Maverick and ask if he'd discovered anything. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a good explanation when Barry asked tomorrow. "Derek? Derek, can you hear me? Wake up, please." After a full day and night of heavy rain, the storm cleared by morning. Sunlight streamed through the curtains that hadn't been closed properly, falling onto Derek's bed. After completing its system upgrade, Snowball had chosen a realistic body. Soft cat paws gently landed on Derek's face, lightly tapping him to wake up. Snowball's voice made Derek struggle open his eyes, but after just a quick glance, he closed them again, too worn out to stay awake. He was so tired, so exhausted, and in pain. Just didn't want to move at all. "Derek, you need to stay awake. You're running a fever." Snowball bounced around on the bed, tugging at Derek's blanket and pulling it over his hands and legs. "I just went to upgrade the system. How did you end up looking like this?" Derek strained to open his eyes, then slowly turned his head to meet the gaze of the silver kitten crouched beside him. Unlike before, Snowball's fur now looked lifelike, and up close, you could even feel a real warmth coming from it. Derek was a little surprised. He had told Snowball about his situation with Barry. Snowball pressed close to his face, then glanced around the room. Barry wasn't there. Normally, after something like this, he wouldn't just leave without a word. He'd at least wait until Derek woke up. Something's off. Derek reached for his phone to check the time, feeling around the pillow for a while before remembering it was on the sofa. He looked at Snowball and said, "My phone's on the couch. Could you fetch it for me? I'm glad I got a body of my own. I wouldn't have anyone else to look after you otherwise." Snowball hopped off the bed, dashed into the living room, found Derek's phone on the sofa, grabbed it by the case, and brought it back. There were several missed calls from Levi. The latest one was last night, the earliest this morning at 9. Besides Levi, Samuel had also tried reaching out. After failing to get through by phone, he switched to sending messages. "Derek? Are you okay? Let me know as soon as you wake up. If you don't reply, I might actually call." Samuel's messages came about every half hour, and the last one was just a few minutes ago. Worried he might really follow through, Derek mustered his strength to reply. "Derek, you're not actually going to call, are you? I still have some dignity left. I don't want to be embarrassed for Liv." If Derek really ended up getting rushed by emergency services over something like this, he'd never hear the end of it. Samuel must have been waiting for Derek's reply, because as soon as Derek sent his message, the phone rang. "Derek, did you just wake up? We've been calling you non-stop." Derek rubbed his temples, his voice rough. "My phone was on the couch. I didn't hear it. What's going on?" There was a long silence on the other end. Samuel stood on the balcony, pacing with visible impatience, then turned toward Barry's bedroom when he heard that the family doctor was giving him 4 fluids. Barry remained unconscious. Mateo looked worried and tense. Levi had returned to the company to take control of things, and right now, Maverick was the one staying by his side. Levi quickly identified the person behind it all. Levi feared William might take advantage of this situation to target the company, so after notifying Samuel to come over, he quickly headed to the office. He called Derek several times during his journey, wanting to ask why Barry had returned alone, but all calls went unanswered. This made Levi uneasy, though he also worried it might just be another possibility. Derek simply sleeping and not hearing the phone. He could only confide in Samuel and have him reach out, but Samuel quickly realized something wasn't right. Derek's voice sounded weak and tired. "Your voice doesn't sound quite right." Samuel felt awkward asking it. like he was prying into someone else's private matters. Derek picked up on his hesitation and quickly explained, "I'm feeling a bit under the weather. Just a mild fever. Taking some medicine should help. Levi called me several times. Is there something urgent? It's hard to explain over the phone in just a few words. I'll come see you soon. Do you want anything special? I can bring it for you." Barry's condition was now stable. He only needed to wake up on his own. Samuel began worrying about Derek. Their relationship wasn't yet clear, and under these circumstances, especially since they were apart afterward, it was hard to say whether this would end well or not. Derek shook his head. "I'm not hungry. I don't feel like eating." After ending Samuel's call, Derek forced himself to sit up straight. He stared at the unread messages on his phone, his expression weary. What kind of mess is this? Even with a solid emotional connection, suddenly being thrown into this situation was still overwhelming for him. And then there's... Snowball tilted its head, noticing Derek's troubled expression, and said, "Derek, you're not really against Barry, so why the serious look?" Derek gave a bitter smile. "Snowball, this isn't my body. I'm living someone else's life." Snowball fell silent, and after a long pause, it looked at Derek with a serious expression and said, "Derek, could it be possible that you two are actually the same person?" Snowball wasn't a rookie system, though it had mostly focused on helping its host watch the drama unfold. This was its first time handling a mission with actual guidance goals, but it still had solid foundational knowledge and knew the main world's rules inside out. Before the system underwent its upgrade, it already sensed something off. After the update was complete, with the full world map revealed and buggy mission tasks fixed, every one of its suspicions was confirmed step by step. This world has never been ordinary from the start. Snowball glanced at the newly upgraded interface, now free from any obscured overlays, with the main objectives and essential items clearly visible. There are two main missions. Change the fate of Barry, the Luckbringer, who was destined to meet a tragic end. Host Missy. Second, locate the exiled Lucky One, Derek. System task. Key items include red USB drive, already trigger, airplane ticket notebo, memory photo album. Snowball lingered on the second mission for a long time, and the system kindly added Derek's full name, reminding it that their goals aligned. Snowball never expected that not only had Derek's mission details been hidden by the world, but so had its own mission evaluation criteria. It quickly scanned through the new timeline and realized its earlier assumption, that the main system had malfunctioned and sent it here, was wildly off the mark. The main system wasn't broken at all. It was actually quite sharp-minded. It only realized it had made a major mistake just 1 second before the mission began, and to cover up its error, it grabbed an available system at random to take the blame. Unfortunately, Snowball was the closest to this world and ended up being the perfect scapegoat system. "Derek, after everything that's happened, do you still not remember anything at all?" Snowball showed Derek its system interface and revealed the truth about this world. In reality, the true lucky ones weren't William, but Derek and Barry. This small world was built on their love story, unfolding their growth and journey together. Their tale featured childhood friendship, innocent affection, joyful moments, painful separations, deep trust, and periods of doubt and conflict. The storyline was complete. The supporting characters were vivid and independent in their arcs, with a logical flow, enough to give rise to this small world. William could be considered the antagonist in this story. He was the illegitimate son of Samuel's father's affair, raised away from view. His mother refused to accept being a mistress forever and confronted the Sue family and Isabella. Isabella had no tolerance for dishonesty. She immediately ended the marriage, left her husband behind, and made the situation public, ensuring that even if William returned to his family, he would still carry the label of an illegitimate child. A tainted background, a mother struggling with emotional instability, a father obsessed only with personal gain. William's past was a mess. His childhood had been marked by harsh treatment, domination, and constant criticism. As he grew up, his mindset became twisted and his behavior increasingly arrogant. He envied the happiness Derek and Barry shared, yet longed for Derek's cheerful nature. He constantly found ways to disrupt their lives at every opportunity. In the end of the story, he naturally faced consequences from his own actions. What he did came back to haunt him, but now everything has gone off track. the small world's flow is interrupted, and everyone's fate has strayed far from its original path. The root of the problem lies in William's fan. Someone who created an alternate universe centered around William as the main character. In this version, William was truly the lucky one. Barry was overshadowed and kept in check. Derek was no longer Barry's childhood friend, but became a mere scapegoat. A tool with no identity, completely cast aside. If the story ended there, according to the different rules governing the original world and the fan-created one, they would remain entirely separate realms with no overlap. But William's fan-creator wasn't content with that. She loved William obsessively, convinced his hardships were due to society's unfair treatment of him, and harbored deep resentment toward every positive character. Barry, Derek, both sets of parents, even Samuel and Levi, with her pen as a weapon, she rescued William while relentlessly targeting those who cherished their own lives, striking them down with cold, calculated cruelty. The fan-created world began to consume the original one, eliminating its central figure, shaking the foundation of the small realm and causing it to collapse. In that moment, Derek, whose memories hadn't been erased, awakened. His ongoing struggle with the fan-creator gave the original world a slim chance to survive. The multiverse detected the anomaly and stepped in, but the situation unfolded too quickly, with the fan-created world gaining the upper hand, causing the system to misjudge it as just another mission focused on romance or conquest. Even though the system was recalled at the last moment, it had already misled Snowball, preventing it from immediately recognizing this world as a merged one. After reviewing the situation, Snowball watched Derek with hopeful eyes. Its mission was to recover Derek. Put simply, helping him regain his lost memories. Now that the two worlds were intertwined and some elements had merged, the more memories Derek recovered, the better chance there was for the original world to return to stability. Derek felt dizzy and disoriented. The information Snowball provided wasn't without value. Once he realized he and his former self were one and the same, flashes of past memories surged through his mind. He couldn't help but recall the Jiang family's villa, the lush grape arbor beneath which two children stood, a scene he'd seen many times in dreams, one of them especially clear in his memory. The young child with an old soul, demanding he never forget, stubbornly following close behind, their gaze filled with sorrow and pain. Derek's heart tightened. Then came the image of him sitting beside Charlotte on the sofa, flipping through a family album that night. Was she really just showing him photos? Charlotte wasn't someone who dwelled on emotions, yet she kept sharing the stories behind each photo. Wasn't that her way of trying to bring Derek's memories back? When the dreamer was cleaning up obstacles for William, unable to manage the entire world and fix the glitches from changing the rules, she simply ignored anyone she couldn't control. Ironically, that very neglect meant those left out were barely affected, so they still remembered Derek, recalled his growth with Barry, knew they had been lovers, and remembered their engagement. These people unintentionally revealed truths. Some were caught by the world's consciousness, had their memories erased and lives rewritten. Others sensed something was off and quietly fought back with love, gently guiding Derek toward remembering. A bittersweet ache filled Derek's chest. He'd avoided the Jiang family's parents before, afraid he wasn't truly theirs or that they'd reject him. But when he finally saw them, he couldn't help but reach out to them with genuine trust. He had been loved. Far from being nothing at all. SNW ball, I'm really hurting right now. The discomfort from being ill made Derek feel more vulnerable than ever. The past was so close, yet he couldn't recall any of those feelings. Like a fleeting dream he could see but never truly hold, it reminded him of when he'd lost his memory and felt utterly trapped. Struggling alone in the dark, as everything around him turned away, drifting farther and farther. Even the light seemed to fade slowly. He was left behind, with no past and no clear future. Loneliness became his constant companion, and when he reached out to embrace something, there was only emptiness. If it hadn't been for remembering Barry, he might have already given up. How can I understand this? I wasn't the cause of William's pain. Why should she take away my happiness to fill in what William lost? Derek couldn't fathom such madness. The real source of William's hardship was his family, yet they remained hidden from view. In the fan-created story, they were merely stepping stones in William's romantic entanglements, reduced to bones beneath a festering celebration. Every line written by the storyteller carried the weight of blood from these innocent people. She stood proudly, speaking with intense conviction, appearing as a savior descending from above. Yet she was only using flowers to mask a swirling abyss of despair. Snowball climbed onto the pillow and gently rubbed its fluffy head against Derek's hand, offering warmth and comfort. Because of jealousy over you and Barry growing up close like siblings. She turned you into strangers who don't recognize each other, forcing you to chase while receiving no response. Because of jealousy over Samuel having a happy, fulfilling family. She twisted the truth, turning him into an illegitimate son, making it impossible for him to be with the one he loves, leading to separation and heartbreak. Jealousy is ugly. It can twist a person beyond recognition. Derek looked down at Snowball and let out a dry, helpless laugh. Jealousy of happiness, so she destroys everything without thought. She had the power to build a new world for William and change his fate, but instead chose to satisfy herself through taking from others. Disgusting, Derek spoke, his voice hoarse but carrying unmistakable disgust. This person is just as repulsive as William was. Snowball lifted a paw to smooth Derek's fur, offering comfort. When the system flashed, its medicine had arrived. Snowball opened the elevator access so someone could leave the medication inside. It felt like they were living in different worlds. Barry on one level, and he on another. In a sudden flash of insight, a thought struck Derek. He called out to Snowball, who was walking ahead. Snowball, Barry's behavior last night seemed off. Could anyone besides you and me trigger the key item? Snowball turned around. Only you and Barry. Are you suspecting that Barry activated the red USB drive? USB drives are typically used for storing data, and based on the two subsequent key items, I think it likely contains memories from your shared past. Derek and Barry were both experiencing memory loss. The system's main help centers around memory recovery, so with the USB drive capable of holding so much information, it was natural for Snowball to make this connection. It evolved because the item had been triggered. What's been unusual about Barry lately? Snowball asked. Derek fell silent. There were too many strange things, sudden distance, cold spells, unexpected warmth, apologies, all like two personalities constantly pulling him in opposite directions, leaving him confused and inconsistent. Derek felt restless. He had an uneasy feeling about the USB drive. Every time he thought about it, a heavy weight settled in his chest, as if something unpleasant had happened because of it. Snowball noticed his low mood and comforted him. Things will work out when the time comes. Right now, what matters most is that you start feeling better. Derek pressed his lips together. I hope so. The sound of the elevator came from outside. Derek opened the door to get medicine, and when he returned, his eyes naturally drifted toward the photo wall by the entrance. Each photograph captured his journey from childhood to now. He'd once thought there was something off about how they were taken, like they were meant for two people. Now, looking again, he noticed an unclear figure had appeared in the photos at some point. The shadow stood right beside Derek, filling in a lopsided composition and leaning close as if naturally part of the moment. Derek was startled, but quickly regained his composure. He stared intently at the vague figure and murmured to himself, "Memory album." Snowball followed his gaze. The figures in the photos looked faded with time, their colors dimmed and blurred, but on the more recent ones, around adulthood, the outline of Barry was barely recognizable. As the figure appeared in the photos, the space before Derek's eyes shifted visibly and rapidly. The photo wall stretched endlessly. What was once just the entryway transformed into a long corridor, with pictures arranged at varying heights in deliberate order. Traditional Chinese-style dividers added depth to the space, guiding those who walked through it to follow the photos and trace the two of them growing up as they stepped into the living room. Derek moved forward. The timeline in the pictures shifted with each step, and so did the layout of the house around him. Time and space interweaving beneath his feet. The ceiling of the living room gradually rose higher, and the space expanded outward. It was like opening an old magic book, summoning a magical figure, who drew ancient symbols and chanted spells to erase all traces of the past, transforming the entire home into something brand new. Derek saw the balcony he'd once thought was just a trick of his eyes during dusk. The layout of the house had completely changed, with the space and rooms doubled in size. Derek stood still, and Snowball brought up a spatial blueprint. Time and space had shifted. What Derek had never seen before, the neighboring house, was actually part of his own home all along. But to match his image as just a minor wealthy young man, this world had split it into two separate parts. Derek, this is your true home, Snowball concluded. Derek took 2 steps forward, the space around him both familiar and strange. He ran his hand along the sofa back, turned to look at the memory corridor he'd just come through, and a wild thought crossed his mind. Could it be that, before I came back, I was trapped on the other side? Derek returned to where the entrance used to be, now a long corridor, and moved toward the newly appeared half of the space. He pushed open the tightly closed door, and fragmented memories began to surface in his mind. He had once sat on this floor, standing up for Barry against the fanfiction characters, repeatedly pulling Barry back from falling apart, preventing them from freely reshaping his life. His longtime sanctuary had only ever been his study, just one wall away from the living room, yet a world apart. Derek remembered the travel diary he almost threw away. He pulled open drawers and cabinets, searching all around. Snowball followed behind, shifting books and papers aside, until finally finding it inside a box filled with medals. The black and gold travel diary lay quietly there. Derek picked it up, flipped open a page at random, and saw his own casual notes written beside the ticket stub. After finishing training today, I saw peach blossoms blooming by the roadside and snapped a quick photo to send to my brother. I didn't expect he'd go back home just to take pictures of the old family house's peach tree for me. It was raining today and I didn't have class, so I flew back to surprise my brother. He had a business meeting and didn't come home, so I ended up being alone in the house for 2 days. I'm mad. Mad at him. I'll never surprise him again. My brother flew over to see me, and when he smiled, it was so warm and lovely. I felt really happy. On the flight, I met someone annoying. I only felt better after my brother gave me a hug and lifted me up. Did my brother sneak a peek at my journal? No way. Close your eyes. The tickets had dates marked across 4 long years, showing it wasn't just Derek making trips back and forth. The entries in the journal started as endless words and slowly faded into fewer notes. As he flipped through the pages, memories swirled in Derek's mind. He held the journal tightly and stepped back along the hallway where it all began. The blurry figure in the photo slowly came into focus. Barry's face finally emerged, and with it, Derek's memories returned clearly. From childhood to adolescence, from teenage years to adulthood, every precious moment between them began flooding back. The memories twisted by fantasy, the life stolen away. Everything was slowly returning to its true path. Snowball, I remember now, he was Derek, and yet also Derek. The reason for having 2 names was that he had been kidnapped as a child. The one who took him was the secretary of Huan Yu Group. That year, Huan Yu was in turmoil, facing internal and external pressures. The secretary had embezzled a large sum of money to cover her boyfriend's gambling debts. When caught, her boyfriend urged her to kidnap Barry to pressure the Liu family. But unexpectedly, Barry had an urgent matter and left early that day. Seeing time running short, the secretary made a decisive move. Using her position, she took 5-year-old Derek from kindergarten and warned Huan Yu not to call the police or report the incident, demanding a payment in exchange for their safe departure. As long as they remained unharmed, they would return the child. Otherwise, both sides would suffer irreversible harm. No one would come out ahead. The Jiang and Liu families were close allies. Their family ties weren't as simple as fictional stories might suggest. They were both prominent clans. The elders from their grandparents' generation had endured revolution and war, sharing a deep bond forged in hardship. They entered business together after the reforms and weathered economic crises. Their family roots ran deep here. The older generation was open-minded. Those who preferred commerce took over the business, while others could join the military or enter politics. Barry and Derek were now in their 3rd generation. By their time, the family bond remained strong. So even though it was Derek who had gone missing, Huan Yu dared not act recklessly. They launched a full-scale search and did everything possible to delay events. Unfortunately, in those days, surveillance systems and internet infrastructure were still limited. Some areas even lacked mobile phones, let alone relying on nationwide tracking technology. The secretary and her boyfriend fled with Derek. Their plan was to escape the region entirely, find a place where no one would recognize them, go into hiding, and wait for the storm to pass before re-emerging. They hid Derek in a sealed container to avoid being tracked, but over time he lost consciousness due to lack of air and was eventually left behind in the vast snowfields. Fortunately, Derek survived by chance. He was found by the head of a welfare home and taken in for treatment. Though he lost his memories, he managed to survive. The secretary and her boyfriend fell into conflict after Derek's supposed death. Their disagreement led to an argument, and the secretary stormed off in anger. Her actions gave away a key clue that allowed authorities to catch her. Her boyfriend escaped instead. After days on the run, the secretary looked worn and exhausted. Facing police questioning, she broke down in tears, insisting that Derek was dead. Out of fear, they had simply abandoned him somewhere without remembering exactly where. Police searched the area based on her account, but found neither the box nor Derek. They questioned neighbors and locals, but no one had seen him. Derek vanished without a trace, dealing a severe blow to the Jiang family. Charlotte nearly fell seriously ill, and Mia was overwhelmed with guilt. She kept thinking that if she hadn't called Barry home that day, none of this would have happened. Derek usually went to and from school with Barry. It just so happened that on that particular day, things were different. When Barry left, Derek was taking a nap. He didn't wake him up, but told the supervising teacher instead. He had specifically asked that Charlotte come to pick him up, but the teacher was too busy playing cards with friends and forgot all about it. Another teacher remembered the secretary from past pickups, didn't question it, and let Derek go with her without hesitation. While the adults were consumed by guilt, Barry blamed himself. He kept replaying in his mind, if only he'd woken Derek up or taken him home together, would this have ever happened? He couldn't accept that Derek was gone. For 2 years, both families quietly avoided mentioning Derek. They posted countless missing person flyers, and Isabella used her public influence to share the story on newspapers and TV, hoping someone might see it and return the child. But all those efforts turned up nothing. Silence followed. As time passed, hope faded, and people began urging Charlotte to consider having another child while they were still young. Barry refused to give up. He poured all his savings into the search, expanding outreach efforts with a focus on the direction the suspect fled. Fortune finally smiled. Someone recognized the doctor who treated Derek, an impoverished middle-aged man, and from him, they learned about the orphanage. Barry went to the orphanage on his own, afraid that if he told anyone and failed to find Derek, it would only bring disappointment. So he kept quiet, using a summer camp trip as an excuse, and brought along a bodyguard before heading out. At that time, Derek had already settled into the orphanage environment and accepted his new identity. His memory loss hadn't made him withdrawn or downcast. He remained cheerful and full of laughter, though he occasionally stared off into space and reacted a little slower than most people. He didn't recognize Barry. When Barry held him tightly and cried, Derek just looked at him with a blank expression. Later, Barry informed the family, and both sets of parents arrived in the middle of the night. They were overcome with emotion, weeping loudly, while Derek remained expressionless. The brain injury caused him to lose all memories of his past. Due to limited resources at the orphanage, he hadn't received proper care. For a long time after being found, he went through various medical examinations. Charlotte believed that returning home was like a fresh start for him, so she added a roof radical above the character Chun, symbolizing how this star had finally come back from its long journey and found its way home. With his parents' deep affection and Barry's constant presence, Derek gradually recovered. As time passed, the negative effects of the kidnapping faded away, and his life slowly returned to normal. He remained optimistic and cheerful as always, full of energy and kindness. Everyone's go-to source of happiness. In his original world, his early dream wasn't to attend a university, but to join the military or apply for a police academy. But Charlotte couldn't let go of how he had disappeared before, and Barry wouldn't accept him pursuing such a risky path, not wanting to see his loved ones suffer. Derek carefully reconsidered and ultimately gave up that plan, choosing instead to enroll at a university. I got engaged with Barry after the college entrance exam. He asked me to stay behind, so I thought he was trying to talk me out of joining the military. I actually felt relieved and told him I wouldn't go, but what he meant was for me to stay right here. When he found out I'd be going to a university in the fall, he believed I had lied to him and didn't speak to me for a whole week. Even refused to see me off when I headed to school. Derek gave his plane ticket planner a little lift in his hand. At that time, he was young and full of energy, filled with dreams about the future and brimming with endless drive. He loved Barry enough to compromise once. But he wasn't going to keep doing it forever. Still, people need to be sweet-talked. He deliberately chose Barry's birthday to come back and celebrate, making a promise that he'd return soon, so as not to let Barry suffer too much from missing him. Barry didn't want Derek to get off so easily. After all, who lets a young couple go long distance right after getting together? But Barry couldn't resist Derek's sweet talk, his playful teasing, and the warm hugs and kisses. Eventually, he gave in and was completely won over. Memories surged forward, no longer fragmented like a broken record, but flowing smoothly in clear sequences, each event naturally leading to the next, with Derek able to piece them together on his own. For instance, he remembered how he unexpectedly gained fame at school, sparking a deep interest in new media. After graduation, instead of returning to Barry's side, he turned toward the entertainment industry and started a company with Samuel, building their future together. That company was now the one he had taken over, Xingyuan Entertainment. In the fan-created world, it had been given to Barry at first, but in the end, came back into his hands. Another memory resurfaced. The man who once abducted him was Benjamin, who later became a local businessman. He used charity events as a cover to run illegal operations, and when he tried to exploit artists under Derek's company, Derek uncovered the old case and had him arrested. In the fan-made version, Benjamin served as William's loyal assistant and lived a comfortable life. But Derek could send him to prison once, and he could do it again. Derek was still the same Derek. Looking back, nothing seemed changed. Yet the invasion of fan-created stories was very real, leaving his world still in turmoil. He remembered many other things too, like Barry's unique house. The kind that puzzled fans without explanation. It was because it had been chosen by Derek and Barry together after their engagement as their future home, their wedding house. Derek felt a wave of irritation. After taking his medication, he sat on the floor with much clearer thoughts. The plane ticket planner rested on his lap as he leaned back against the sofa, covering his face and shaking his head, completely baffled by what this writer had against him. Grandpa. In that fan story, it says Grandpa passed away. Could he really be in danger? Derek suddenly remembered someone he had forgotten. He shot upright in his seat. Among the older generation, both his grandparents had passed away early. Recently, Grandma from the Liu family had also died of illness. But Grandpa was still strong and healthy. Derek and Barry often returned to the ancestral home to visit him, playing chess and fishing together. Snowball checked the system. Derek, don't worry, Grandpa's doing just fine. When you're not involved, Mateo is still taking care of him as usual. He's safe. Just temporarily unable to be in the same space with you right now. Derek let out a sigh of relief. Some earlier puzzling details suddenly made sense now that his memories were returning. There are so many people at the Liu family ancestral home because Grandpa needs care. Barry's frequent visits there are just a leftover habit from the original world. When he first came back, Mateo had delivered several outfits to him. Each one fit perfectly because the Liu family already had clothes made for him. That's why he always had trouble sleeping whenever he returned to the old house with Barry. It was because his last memory there was a heated argument with Barry, ending in them parting ways on bad terms. Derek instinctively touched his arm, where a faint bruise still lingered. He pressed gently. No broken bones were there. Where exactly is Grandpa stuck in memory? Could it be the fight with Barry? That would really hurt him. Derek felt uneasy. He wasn't in the right that day. He'd broken his hand while stepping in to help someone, and Daniel and William were involved too. He didn't want Barry to know, so he lied. But Barry had planned a surprise visit to the set, and his lie fell apart within minutes. Barry handled it with respect in public, asked what happened without argument or drama, helped manage the news, and quieted the online buzz. He brought Barry home to recover. At first things were fine, but somehow something was said wrong, and they ended up arguing again. Derek remembered how off Barry seemed that day. Never had he seen him so upset. After repeated attempts to step back, both finally calmed down. Then Derek found the red USB drive and saw the video inside. At that moment, shock froze him. His whole body went stiff, his mind blank. His rational thoughts hadn't caught up yet. It was the pent-up tension from their argument that had already exploded. So why did he have these videos? And were they even edited? Derek felt like the world had collapsed. He couldn't believe it. The situation was completely beyond his understanding of Barry. It hurt so much, like the cherished ideal in his heart suddenly turned rotten overnight. Derek regretted remembering it now. That's why the system gave him 2 of the 3 items. Only the USB drive was missing. It must have been to stop him from finding out too soon, or there'd be no story beyond this moment. Snowball tilted her head in curiosity, glancing at the original story's plot and confirming that Derek and Barry had been exploited because of this argument, which led to the world being breached. But since the original story needed to be completed before the small world could run properly, Snowball was able to view future events. Even if they wouldn't be useful later, solving this misunderstanding right now was crucial for Amelia's plan. Derek, could it be that you misunderstood Barry? That video might actually be one you recorded. Derek shot back. Are you kidding me? Would I really go mad like that? Snowball rubbed his forehead. Derek, wasn't there a rose in the video background? Do you remember what day it was? Derek paused and thought for a moment. Still couldn't catch on. Snowball continued. You were celebrating Barry's birthday. After filming the memory, you forgot to turn off the camera. The next day, in a rush to leave, you asked Barry to clean up. So he ended up taking the blame for you. Derek froze, his lips parting slightly. Was it really him who forgot to turn off the camera? Why didn't he explain himself back then? Derek's voice dropped, and he realized he hadn't given Barry a chance to speak up. He'd already felt a bit hurt during the argument, and seeing the recording only made him feel worse. So overwhelmed that he couldn't calm down. Grandpa came over when he heard the noise, asking what had happened. Derek's sharp words were already on his lips, but seeing Grandpa, afraid of causing worry, he swallowed them one by one. So tightly held in that he ended up crying uncontrollably and rushed away from the old house. That's where the memories of the original world ended. He and Barry had both been stuck in this argument. But thankfully, Snowball told him Grandpa hadn't gotten trapped at this moment because in the original timeline, he and Barry made up quickly. Their bond wasn't as fragile as it seemed. This argument actually helped clear out long-standing issues between them, helping both grow more mature in how they handle their feelings. I remember everything now. Will brother remember too? Derek knelt slightly, turning to look at Snowball. Barry had already found the USB drive and must have seen what was inside. No wonder he's been acting distant and unpredictable toward Derek. From his point of view, he must be feeling really confused right now. Could he have remembered something? Snowball let out a quiet sigh, breaking Derek's hope. Derek, I'm sorry, but right now only you've escaped the storyline. Derek wasn't surprised. He adjusted his mood with a smile and said, It's fine. It was him who found me before. Now it's my turn to find him. The countless miles of their childhood couldn't keep them apart when they were meant to reunite. And now that they're already together, dealing with the troublesome obstacles in the way is just a small step. Derek had recovered some of his own memories. Samuel rushed over from Barry's villa and paused at the door, stunned by how different the layout was compared to before. After a moment, he walked in as if nothing unusual had happened. Derek's memories up to the point where his original world ended could return to normal. But anything that happens after will differ due to the influence of fan creations. Right now, the two worlds are intertwined. Others still feel the pull of the world's consciousness and naturally overlook certain changes. That actually saved Derek from having to explain anything at all. Even though Derek said he had no appetite over the phone and didn't want food, Samuel still brought something for him. As he changed his shoes and stepped into the living room, he immediately spotted the medicine on the coffee table. Derek hadn't had time to put it away yet. Samuel looked at him with concern and asked gently, Are you feeling better? Do you feel like eating anything now? Derek shook his head. Samuel placed the food on the coffee table and said, If you get hungry later, just heat it up in the microwave. Got it? Derek said, pushing himself up from the floor and settling onto the sofa. Now that he looked at Samuel again, his feelings toward him were completely different. He and Barry have grown up together, sharing a large part of their social circle. Samuel and Levi are among those mutual friends. The Sioux family has always been close with their two households, and Samuel has been like an older brother since childhood. Whenever Barry had issues, Samuel would step in to help smooth things over. This time, Samuel came over because of Barry's situation. When he left, Barry was still asleep, and Maverick was staying by his side. Once Barry wakes up, I'll make sure he gives you a proper explanation. I won't let you be treated unfairly. If there's anything on your mind, just tell me directly. Don't keep it bottled up. Samuel treats both of them as friends. When something like this happens, his first thought isn't about taking sides. It's to understand the full situation. As for Samuel's mention of feeling wronged, Derek didn't react strongly. Even if he hadn't regained his memory, it was still something he had agreed to willingly. Both parties were on the same page. He'd only be upset that Barry left him behind. Brother Chun, you don't need to worry so much. Do you really think Barry could get anywhere if I didn't want it? That's true, but your feelings aren't clear yet, and he wasn't conscious when it happened. Don't you worry about getting hurt. Samuel sat beside Derek and gently tapped his forehead with a sigh. When someone is caught up in strong emotions, they don't always think clearly. Once the intensity fades, it's hard to say whether regret will follow. Derek rubbed his forehead and gave a faint smile, muttering, I actually think he was more aware than ever at that moment. He insisted on coming back and knew the house layout perfectly, reaching for things as if he'd lived there his whole life. Even if he truly forgot everything due to medication, Derek wouldn't be upset. What's meant for him will eventually come back in time. Samuel had come over to help reconcile matters, and seeing that Derek wasn't affected, he felt much relieved. But then he paused, worried Derek might still be caught up in the situation, and asked, what are your plans from here? After everything that's happened, it can't just keep going on like this. Playing around with feelings, Derek looked up at the crystal chandelier above him. It was Barry who had accompanied him when choosing the furniture. Now that Barry had returned and regained clarity, how could he possibly let romance hold him back? Of course, there were still feelings deep inside. It all depends on how things look when Barry the busy one finally comes to. Given that Barry still left Derek under these circumstances, it's likely the world consciousness got involved. What happens next is hard to predict, so Derek didn't feel the need to give Samuel a definite answer right away. Samuel said with concern, don't end up like me. Don't let one person trap you like that. Derek turned to him. Samuel was thinking about himself, worried Derek might lower his pride and compromise just for the sake of this situation. In a relationship not yet clearly defined, the one who cares more often ends up hurting deeper. Derek stood up, wrapped an arm around Samuel's shoulders, resting his chin on top of them as he looked at him with bright eyes. Have you ever thought about just being straightforward with Levi? You know how slow he is when it comes to feelings. Maybe your past gestures were seen by him as nothing more than brotherly care? In the original timeline, Samuel and Levi had gone through some rough moments before they finally got together. They were like bickering partners who couldn't admit their feelings for each other. Levi always thought he was completely straight and never noticed how his emotions changed. It wasn't until Samuel pushed him that Levi finally realized. Now that Derek knew what was going on, he definitely couldn't let Samuel keep suffering from unreturned feelings because of the world consciousness's influence. Samuel gave a wry smile. I just don't want to lose even our friendship in the end. Seeing Samuel hesitate, Derek teased on purpose. Then I'll go ahead and set Levi up with someone else? Samuel turned sharply, clearly caught off guard by that comment. His heart churned with mixed emotions, leaving him speechless for a moment. He had already moved on from Huan Yu and decided to let go, so it wasn't right for him to stand in Levi's way. But if Levi really started something with someone else, he'd still feel a deep ache inside. He loved this person deeply, so long that it had become second nature. He just couldn't casually say goodbye after all this time. But precisely because he'd held onto these feelings for so long without any response, he never dared to make his true emotions clear. afraid the other person might pull away in surprise. Samuel laughed at his own hesitation and didn't want to keep talking about it. Don't try to push me. I'm not a kid anymore. Staying stuck on one dead-end path won't make me look any less pitiful. A crooked tree at least bends, but the one you're hanging onto now is just too straight, Derek said without giving up, muttering under his breath. Samuel heard it and gave him another playful flick on the forehead. He wasn't sure if he was imagining things, but Derek seemed unusually close to him today. Just days ago, he wouldn't even let anyone glance at his chest. Yet now he's willingly leaning in and hugging him. Samuel wasn't bothered by it. Deep down, Derek felt like a younger brother to him. If Derek wanted to get close, Samuel only felt happy about it. At the lakeside villa, Barry slowly came awake, his 4-needle already removed. The family doctor had stepped out to fetch some medicine. Maverick, sitting on a nearby couch, put away his phone as soon as he saw Barry stir, then walked over to help him sit up and gently placed a pillow behind his back. "How are you feeling? Is it better now?" Barry glanced at Maverick, then at his own hands, pressing his fingers to his temple. His mind was completely blank. He remembered nothing about what happened the night before. "What on earth happened to me?" Barry asked. Maverick froze for a moment, then gestured slightly. "How much of last night do you remember?" Barry tried hard to recall, remembering only that Amelia had come to apologize, but everything after that was low. Maverick froze, holding his breath, looking flustered and unsure of what to. How could he not remember? "Brother, you were with someone last nig." He pulled a chair over and sat down, gathering his thoughts before sincerely apologizing to Barry. "Look, you were drugged last night. I'm truly sorry. It was the business partner my grandfather introduced. He had ties with William, and the drink he served you was compromised. Levi and I looked into it, and William planned to use Amelia to ruin your reputation." Barry's expression turned chilly. That explained why Amelia had rushed to him last night seeking forgiveness. This was her plan all along. If anything had happened between them, even just overly close physical contact, it would have been enough for the media to spin a scand. Amelia isn't foolish. She clearly understands the risks. It must have been William behind Teach. Barry had long given up on her, but he still let out a bitter laugh. "Did anything actually happen between you?" "Absolutely not." Maverick quickly denied. Just that much was terrifying enough. Had something really happened, he wouldn't be here calmly waiting for Barry to wake up Todd. Maverick continued. "You and Amelia didn't do anything, but things with someone else are uncertain. Levi drove my car to take you to the hospital, but you refused. You insisted he drive you to meet someone instead. After that, we're not sure what happened, because you left Levi behind and disappeared on your own." Barry frowned, his temple throbbing painfully, a hollow numbness mixed with sharp stabs of pain, like a needle pricking at his nerves. He had the faint feeling he'd forgotten something crucial, but no matter how hard he tried to piece it together, nothing came ba. Who did he leave Levi for? Given how he was feeling at the time, and that Levi didn't follow him, there was only one explanation. The name Derek flashed in Barry's mind. But Derek was supposed to be at home. He wasn't sure, so he asked, "How did I get BSC?" Maverick spread his hands and shrugged. "We don't know. You came back on your own, then collapsed. Levi tried reaching out to the person you went to see, but couldn't get through. Soon after, Samuel managed to contact them. They're likely at that person's place now, handling things for Yo." Maverick paused, his expression unreadable. "Do you want to check in with Samuel? And what about Xingxing's side?" Maverick remembered Barry's engagement. Even though the Liu and Jiang families were on good terms, something like this before the wedding needed to be properly explained to Xingxing. Barry looked up at him. This was the second time Maverick had mentioned Xingxing, and that strange unease crept back in. Without answering right away, Barry picked up his phone to call Samuel. Right now, he needed to confirm something else first. The phone connected quickly and switched straight to video call. Samuel's face appeared on screen, giving Barry a quick glance from head to toe before confirming he was okay. Then smirked. "Awake now?" Barry didn't waste time, straight to the point. "Where are you?" Samuel turned his phone, and Derek came into view. He was wearing a loose t-shirt and looked much better now. His fever had gone down and he seemed back to normal. Meeting Barry's gaze, Derek smiled warmly and waved cheerfully, completely unaffected by what happened yesterday. "Brother." Seeing it was him, Barry's suspicion confirmed. Somehow he felt a sudden sense of relief mixed with a deep undercurrent of unease. Thank goodness it was Derek. He couldn't remember what happened yesterday, and instead, a different memory flashed through his mind. Barry's smile froze. He hadn't even figured out how to handle the video he'd just seen. Now this added another complication. What's wrong with you, brother? You're not actually forgetting it, are you? Snowball, he's being so rude. 1 second of anger, but he doesn't seem to be doing much better than me. Really, Samuel was right there, and Derek couldn't say anything on camera. Instead, his inner thoughts kept piling up. Barry noticed his lips hadn't moved, so he focused on reading his mind. Derek knew Barry would forget, but he didn't hold it against him at all. Maverick sat quietly beside them, staring at his phone without speaking. Though he kept a serious expression, there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. Curious and intrigued, he couldn't help but start chatting with Levi. Maverick, who did Barry meet last night? Levi, Derek? You don't know him, Maverick. Are you being vague on purpose? Maverick read Levi's reply twice, ignoring the misspelled name. He started to suspect that Levi was trying to cover something up. How could he not know Derek? But honestly, Barry did go see Derek last night, so isn't that just normal? Why do Levi and Samuel act like it's a big deal? It made Maverick think Barry had done something wrong, so he didn't dare ask anything about it, afraid he'd say the wrong thing after being away for years and accidentally mess things up. On the other side, Barry and Derek stared at each other for a long time without saying a word. Samuel took the phone and said to both of them, "Enough with the silent staring. You two can talk things through when you're face to face later. Me and Maverick are just extra here. You wouldn't want to say anything awkward in front of us?" The phone shifted toward Samuel, and Barry's smile faded slightly. Knowing he was being treated differently, Samuel gave him a sharp look. "Once you're awake, just call Maverick. I'm staying at Derek's place today. I won't be dropping by to see you." Derek wasn't feeling well and lived alone, so Samuel didn't feel right leaving him unattended and decided to stay and take care of him. Barry had no objections. He needed some time to sort out what was going on, so he quickly ended the call with Samuel. Barry looked at Maverick in front of him. The longtime friend he hadn't seen in years, he felt no stranger to him. From their interaction last night, he was still the same person Barry remembered, except for some things Maverick said that left Barry confused. He mentioned an engagement agreement, talked about hunching, and even joked about Samuel being unfaithful to Levi. Barry didn't believe he was so out of touch that his friends abroad knew about Samuel's relationship with Levi, while he remained completely unaware. Maverick's strange behavior matched that of his parents. There was one thing they all had in common. None of them had been involved in Barry's life for a long time, and they were all overseas. Since he'd started hearing Derek's thoughts, Barry had known something wasn't quite right with the world. Small oddities didn't bother him much, so he hadn't paid them much mind before. But now, this strange situation was directly tied to his own marriage. If he couldn't figure things out, how could he face Derek? He wouldn't let Derek get pulled into any of this. "Where did you hear about our family's arranged alliance with hunching? You're being unfair. Why can't anyone give me a hint?" Maverick, relieved that Barry hadn't been unfaithful, finally relaxed and spoke with ease. "But seriously, I always thought you two tied the knot right after graduation. Who knew it took so long? Did you wait for my return?" "Definitely, my good brother. Awesome move." Maverick couldn't help but feel a little proud of himself. He had no doubts about his friendship with Barry, only surprised that his friend was still unmarried. Barry remained expressionless. Hearing the words graduation and marriage, a red flag went off in his mind. From what he knew, the chairman of Stellar had only one son, someone younger than him and rarely seen in public. He couldn't recall ever meeting him. Could this person really be a classmate? Or even his arranged marriage partner? "I've been waiting for your return. Didn't you have any sign?" Barry didn't ask directly, instead probing gently. "Are you planning on bringing 2 gifts? Barry calmly searched Stellar's information online, trying to spot any inconsistencies. Maverick remained completely unaware. "Giving 1 gift just for you? No way. 2 gifts are definitely in order." Barry paused mid-motion. Stellar's official website showed no such news, but right now that didn't matter anymore. He looked up at Maverick, stunned. Him and Derek? Was Derek really the chairman's son? Barry suddenly remembered. The night Derek had gotten into a fight with William at the charity gala, he'd meant to talk to him. But since Derek was upset, he hadn't said anything. That event had been hosted by Stellar Group. After that evening, Derek had returned to the Jiang family. Pieces of forgotten details now came together in Barry's mind. Derek's sudden change in status, his family's connection to Stellar. This wasn't just a small issue anymore. Barry put down his phone and started to convince Maverick. There's something I need you to keep secret. My memory's been affected, and I can't remember certain things. Maverick's pupils widened suddenly as he stared at Barry in shock, then jumped up and said, I'm going straight to see a doctor. Wait! Barry called out, if this gets around, it'll hurt Huan Yu. Maverick paused and realized that was true. He sank back into his chair stiffly, his heart sinking. Barry said, don't panic. This might be temporary. I'm telling you because we grew up together, and you can help me remember. Maverick's eyes lit up. He slapped his chest proudly. No problem. After all, it was our family's mistake. I'll do anything to help you. Barry smiled. Maverick was still so easy to persuade. Now he could smoothly bring up questions about Derek. He really wanted to know what kind of relationship he and Derek had. According to Maverick's memories, Maverick wasn't good at keeping secrets, especially since he was trying to help Barry. No matter what Barry asked, he'd tell everything without holding back. From his story, Barry pieced together another memory. In that memory, he and Derek weren't strangers at all. They were childhood friends who grew up side by side with a close bond. Derek had been kidnapped as a child because of him, and though he was later found thanks to that same incident, the event left a lasting mark. As a result, Maverick became obsessively involved in Derek's life. Maverick wasn't shy about saying that sometimes he acted like someone with extreme control issues. More overbearing than Derek's own parents. He'd complain about whom Derek hung out with, where he went, even what major he chose in school. If it were anyone else, they'd have already cut ties with him by now. But Derek was different. He had a carefree personality and didn't mind at all. In fact, he found Maverick kind of endearing. Maverick rubbed his arms as goosebumps rose, muttering that this was just typical behavior between two people who were close. Something he simply couldn't understand. Barry listened quietly without interrupting, even though he felt surprised. When Maverick finished speaking, he let out a soft laugh and said, "Me? A freak." Maverick laughed awkwardly and quickly covered his mouth. Even if the freak part was exaggerated, Maverick hadn't been wrong about the control issues. Barry didn't say anything more. There was too much to process. He needed time to think it over. Derek stayed in the house all day, and since Samuel couldn't cook, they ordered takeout for dinner. That evening, Samuel stayed over. Derek arranged for him to sleep in the guest room next door. Samuel had work tomorrow, so he went to bed early. Derek went to bed early too, but he wasn't sleepy. He just lay there staring at the ceiling. Snowball slipped into his blankets and stretched out its limbs with a satisfied yawn. Derek heard the soft purring sound and gently rubbed its back. "You're in a synthetic body now? Can other people still not see you?" When Samuel came in during the day, Snowball was sitting on the sofa. It disappeared only when it sensed Samuel had something to say to Derek and himself. "We can hide from everyone except the host." Snowball purred louder as it enjoyed the scratch. Even if it weren't a simulated body, others could still see it if we lifted the shield. But this feature shouldn't be used lightly. It can trigger warnings. Derek gave a soft hum, gazing at the glowing light outside the window, while chatting casually with Snowball. "I don't recall ever meeting someone named Amelia. What's her background?" "She's an original character, essentially a projection from a dreamer. To make her story feel real, we borrowed parts of your history and another character's past. Who else has had to go through something like this?" Derek felt a bit surprised. Amelia had taken on the identity of his younger brother, and Barry's feelings toward her were actually rooted in Derek's own experiences. "John, this girl is actually the granddaughter of your grandfather's wartime comrades. Her family struggled financially, so our families started supporting her since high school. I checked. She took the college entrance exam this year. She's been studying hard, doing exceptionally well, and got into a military academy. That deserves celebration." Snowball licked its paw and flipped through the girl's file. The reminder jogged Derek's memory. Yes, there was indeed such a younger sister. They rarely crossed paths due to being so far apart, just exchanging contact details now and then. "She's always been grateful," sending warm greetings during holidays, sharing her progress and achievements. She's a truly responsible and thoughtful young woman, given that the family branch had already been cut off. This sister whose identity was taken is now completely forgotten. No trace left at all. She actually got into military academy. That's impressive. Hearing that someone had achieved his long-held dream stirred a quiet, genuine sense of pride within Derek. It's a pity they're not in the same time and place. There's no way to celebrate with her right now. Once this is all over, I'll make it up to her. Snowball nudged against Derek. It was clear his host had a kind heart. No matter the original world or this moment in time, he always felt joy and pride for others' success, as if it were his own accomplishment. It was precisely such kindness that attracted someone like William, someone who thrives on chaos. Snowball flipped through the story, revealing its sharp claws on Derek and Barry's path toward a better life. William was nothing but a stubborn, unpleasant obstacle. The Goo family often compared him to Barry, which twisted his mind over time. When he eventually met Derek, the warmth of his smile briefly touched him, until he realized that kindness wasn't meant for just one person. That only deepened his jealousy and resentment, driving him to sabotage Barry and to harm Derek too. In the story after Derek and Barry argue, he even tries to take Barry hostage. It's clear that some people never truly change, no matter which world they're in. Snowball gave a soft huff. It now had its own body as a little cat, and it would never let Derek get hurt again. Derek took a day to rest at home, then felt refreshed and followed Samuel to work the next day. Samuel said in surprise, "I'm not going to Huan Yu." "I know, I'm not going either." Derek stretched lazily, adjusted his tie, and smiled at Samuel. Huan Yu wouldn't miss him one way or the other. He was now setting off to find his own stars and sky, his company, his entertainment world. Here he came again. Samuel tilted his head and reminded, "Barry's going to be at the office today. He still has a lot of things waiting for him. Don't you want to see him? Or talk to him?" Derek said, "Just took a setback from William. I'm guessing he's too busy for any romantic chats right now. Let's just go to work first. We can sort things out after hours." After regaining his memories, Derek actually felt no rush anymore. William played tricks on both him and Barry. Barry would surely strike back. But Derek was also planning to give William a hard time. Fans online gave William a spotlight in the entertainment world, but that fame truly belonged to Derek. In the original story, William did get involved in the entertainment scene, but long before him, Derek and Samuel had already made their mark. He stepped in just to compete with Samuel, and also to get closer to Derek. Fans rewrote the story beyond recognition, but Derek's true talent couldn't be taken so easily. Filled with energy, Derek's first move back at the company was to call a department meeting. Drawing from his memory, he made subtle adjustments to their work, ensuring key investments and business opportunities were reclaimed quickly, not handed over to others for free. Derek's decisions became sharper than before, with rewards and consequences clearly laid out. Some had minor complaints, but most followed through with focus and dedication. After the meeting, Derek called Harper into his office to ask about Daniel's progress. The funding is secured, the director moved quickly, and the project has already started filming. Harper didn't go to set with Daniel. She sent her assistant instead. Starlight stays out of investment decisions. This director is eager to make a strong impact, and the working environment has been positive so far. Derek advised, "If anything comes up with Daniel, let me know right away. Don't keep anything from me." Harper was used to Derek's special treatment of Daniel, so she nodded in response without asking further. Derek then asked about the others. Harper summarized only the key points, saying nothing unnecessary, clearly separating personal and professional matters. Leaning on his chin, Derek looked at her with clear admiration. He listened intently to her report, a soft smile playing on his lips. His top agent, harmed by the dreamer's changes, pushed down by the former supervisor, her resources greatly reduced, back to square one, but still as dedicated and thorough as ever. Derek couldn't help feeling a pang of sympathy for her. She was the one he personally picked from many candidates, which is exactly why he trusted her with Daniel in the first place. Though things were chaotic right now, thanks to his involvement, quite a few matters had somehow returned to track despite everything. "Derek, that's all the updates I have on each of them. Do you need anything else added?" "Nope, you handle things." I trust you completely. Derek gave his approval, smiling warmly as he sent her off. Harper stood outside the door, glancing sideways at the executive office sign behind her, tilting her head in mild confusion. Intuitively, as a woman, she sensed something off about Derek today, but couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Derek reclined back into his office chair, mentally reviewing the current business situation. These goals were originally just early ambitions he and Samuel had set when starting out. Now, it felt like beginning all over again, with one key difference. He was no longer a shareholder. The world's consciousness transferred his ownership stake to Barry. What a fitting arrangement for two partners in a relationship. Derek stared blankly at the ceiling, speechless. The original story allowed same-sex marriage. He and Barry were engaged, so it made sense that his share was passed to Barry after he was removed from the picture. But remembering past events, Derek couldn't help but think the whole setup felt like a cruel joke. The main reason he and Barry had argued before involved Daniel. He'd stepped in to protect Daniel, which led to conflict with William, and ended up getting hurt due to William's scheme. Barry didn't like Daniel. He thought Daniel was too close to Derek. If it hadn't been for the fact they'd both grown up in the same orphanage, Barry would have found a way long ago to get rid of him. Yet now, even after both he and Derek had lost their memories, Barry still chose to help Daniel. For Derek's sake, his dislike stemmed from care. His help came from the same place. People truly were complex and full of contradictions. Derek was lost in thought when the phone on his desk suddenly rang, snapping him back to reality. It was Barry calling. "Why didn't you come into the office today? Are you not feeling well?" Barry's voice came through the line, hesitant and careful. Derek laughed. "I'm at Xingyuan Entertainment." Barry fell silent. He wanted to ask why Derek had gone to Xingyuan Entertainment today instead of Huanyu, but after everything that happened between them, shouldn't they have sat down and talked? Or was this kind of situation just too ordinary for Derek to care about? But as the words formed on his lips, he remembered Maverick's description of him yesterday. Someone with excessive control and disturbing tendencies. He couldn't bring himself to speak, so he only managed a quiet as if to prove he wasn't like that at all. Derek raised an eyebrow. What exactly did that mean? "Brother, are you working late today?" Derek said, "If not, I'll come pick you up after work. Can I spend the night at your place?" Derek wasn't going to overthink Barry's feelings anymore. Now that his worries were gone, he had no intention of dragging things out with him. Barry might have forgotten their past, but so what? He may have let go of the memories, but he hadn't stopped feeling something for Derek. Thinking back to the close moments they once shared, intimate and tender, he wasn't going to settle for less now. Derek's words came so naturally that Barry didn't catch on right away. He still thought Derek was trying to avoid him, and he blurted out in surprise, You're coming to my place. Can't I? I really want to." Derek's voice was soft and light, like a feather brushing against Barry's ear, sending a faint tingling sensation through him. He slid his chair back, glanced at the schedule on his computer, and canceled his dinner plans. "I don't have anything scheduled for tonight. Come over any time." "Good." Derek's voice was bright and cheerful, and Barry heard a faint knock on the door through the phone. "Someone's here. Let me talk to you later," Derek said, his voice fading as Barry heard a door open, then only silence on the line. Barry stared at his phone, his expression shifting subtly. Was it just my imagination? Derek's behavior today felt different. He wasn't avoiding their connection anymore, but actually stepping forward instead. Could it be because of what happened before? Has he finally let go of his resistance? Barry knew Derek wasn't the kind to change so suddenly. He was more inclined to believe there was another explanation. Maybe Derek found out something? Or remembered something important. Maverick's words left Barry uncertain, neither fully believing nor dismissing them. He just needed time to verify, to make sure everything was real. Barry canceled his dinner engagement, and not long after, Levi came up to ask about it. The gathering had been arranged by Maverick as a gesture from the Chun family to show their apology. Old Mr. Chun hadn't expected William to act so boldly, daring to make moves right under his nose. Not only warning the Gu family but also cutting off the Chen family's business ties with that partner, forbidding anyone from stepping in to smooth things over. "I've got something else tonight. I won't be able to make it. Let Maverick know. I'll return the favor when I can." William's issues didn't need to drag the Chen family into trouble. Barry had already acknowledged their sincerity. The dinner wasn't formal, just a small gathering among close people. It was perfectly fine for him to decline. Levi studied him with suspicion. Barry was principled. Unless Derek came into the picture, his principles would take a back seat. Levi guessed, could it be that Derek invited you? Barry gave no clear answer, his gaze lifting toward the door. When you leave, make sure to close it behind you. Levi snapped his lips shut instantly, swallowing back the rest of his comment. He understood Barry's desire to see Derek. Since the incident, they hadn't met face to face. He'd expected Derek to show up at work today, but instead, Derek went straight to Xingyuan Entertainment. Samuel had told him over the phone that Derek was full of energy and completely unfazed by everything. Back to business. Your investigation has turned up something. William did initially comply with Amelia's requests, but once he realized she had no ties to the Liu family, he started using her influence to help him secure deals. This setup against you was likely about that land plot in the suburbs. Levi handed over the files he'd been holding. Details on Amelia's current situation and William's recent activities. Also, there's another update. Ling Feng has been reaching out to high-level contacts at Stellar lately. Seems like he's trying to secure investment from them. Should we take any action? Barry felt targeted, and it didn't seem like a random impulse. William wouldn't act out of petty spite after just a minor disagreement at the event. Though he wasn't known for having much grace, William still cared about how he appeared in public settings. And any plan would have required careful preparation beforehand. The fact that William had already planned ahead struck Barry as unusual. That's why he asked Levi to look into his recent behavior. Turns out, the effort paid off. The land in the suburban area is a newly announced project open for public bidding, where qualified listed companies are welcome to participate in the auction. Huan Yu indeed has this intention and has been preparing recently. Given that they've long been rivals with Ling Feng, competing over such matters is as routine as daily meals. Nothing surprising about it. But no one expected William to directly target Barry. He set a trap for Barry, not only to create tension between Barry and Derek, but also to get Barry tangled in legal troubles. A CEO with moral shortcomings might not affect the bidding process, but it could impact company stock. Having suffered from this before, William naturally wants Barry to fall into the same trap. Levi stayed at the office all day yesterday. Whenever there was even a hint of trouble, he had the PR team act swiftly. Under his strict watch, nothing about the event at the banquet leaked out, effectively shutting down William's chance to make use of it. If he's so determined to get that land, then let him end up with nothing in the end. Barry wasn't afraid of facing William head-on, but playing such underhanded games only made him look bad. What about Starlight? Levi asked. It was odd, really. They had plenty of business dealings with Starlight and shared many handover points, yet Barry couldn't recall much about them. He almost started doubting his own memory. Barry glanced at his phone. Just earlier, he'd received a call from Derek, the young master of Starlight, who clearly didn't like William, and Maverick mentioned that he and Derek are engaged. Shouldn't he meet Derek's parents to learn more about the situation? Barry looked up at Levi and said seriously, "What do you think of me marrying into Starlight?" "Huh." Levi thought Barry was joking and didn't take it seriously. He chuckled. "Come on. This is about marriage? Do you even know what the other person's like?" Barry's mind pictured Derek's face. When his hair was a bit longer, his eyes innocent and his demeanor gentle, like a harmless little lamb. But once he shaved it short, the brighter side emerged, making him look fresh, clean, and full of energy. Barry couldn't quite put into words what kind of person Derek was. Because he admired every side of him, there were so many things he had remembered that it would be impossible to list them all. If he really had to give an answer, there was only one thing he could say. "That's exactly the kind I like."